Hey everybody, it's Michael. I'm back with another walkthrough video, and today I want to show you Cottage Garden. Cottage Garden is the newest game from Uwe Rosenberg. It's published by Edition Spielwiese, actually a new publisher based in Berlin. The game is for 1 to 4 players, ages 8 and up, and takes about 60 minutes. The version I have here is bilingual, English and German. I don't think there's another publisher yet, so we'll have to see whether there will be a dedicated publisher for the US, for example. What I should also mention is that the game basically debuted today, Thursday, the first day of Edition Spiel 2016. The game is an abstract tile-laying game with a gardening theme. It's similar to Patchwork, which is another abstract tile-laying game that Uwe published 2 years ago. There are some similarities, more or less the tile-laying and the puzzling. You're trying to put those tiles into a grid, but I'd argue that those games are rather different. Patchwork had a very strong focus on economics. This one focuses more on the puzzling and also on clever point scoring. And before I start with the gameplay, I actually have a few thank yous. The first one goes out to Marianne, Master on Board Game Geek. 2 years ago actually, she made a bid for a video I put up in the charity auction for the Jack Vasel Memorial Fund. If you don't know what the Jack Vasel Memorial Fund is, I'll put a link into the show notes. So thank you, Marianne, for your generous donation and the request for me to make a video about this game. The other thank yous go out to Uwe Rosenberg, who put me in contact with the publishers at Edition Spielwiese, and Michael Schmidt of Edition Spielwiese, who actually sent me this review copy of the game. And what I'd like to do now is show you a full 3-player game. Enjoy! I've set up a 3-player game, and as always, let's have a brief look at the components first. In the middle we have the so-called nursery with 16 flower tiles randomly, and the rest of the tiles are put in a queue around the table, with the wheelbarrow marking one end of the queue as, well, actually the beginning, and the other end is the end. Then we have a parasol and 2 beehive tokens. We have flower pot tokens, cat tokens, 1 extra flower bed. Then there's the gardener die that starts on the starting space for 3 players, and it is turned to show the 1. And finally, each player has a planting table, 2 flower beds, 1 with the light side up, 1 with the darker side up, 2 cats, and 6 scoring cubes, 3 orange and 3 blue. And that's already everything you need to know regarding the components, so we can start the game. And by the way, I've given each player a colored token once again to better distinguish them. So let's say that the blue player is the starting player. Each turn has up to 4 phases. The first is the refilling phase. Here we look at the row or column, in this case it's a column, that the gardener die is currently in. And if there's 3 or even 4 empty spaces in that row, then we'd have to refill it from the queue. Right now, of course, there is no empty space. Next is the planting phase. The player can take 1 flower tile from the gardening row, and if he does not want to do that, or he can't do that because none of the tiles would fit, then he'd have to take a flower pot token, but right now the blue player can select any of those 4. Now, the goal is to fill your flower beds. You should do that without covering, if possible, the flower pots or the plant covers, because they'll actually give you points. And the blue player decides to take this tile. And as with Patchwork, for example, you can turn these any way you like. You have to stay within the grid. You can't have tiles hang over, and you can't put tiles on top of each other. You can actually cover the things you're not supposed to cover, but that'll lose you points. And he decides to put the tile like this. Then phase 3 would be a scoring phase. If he'd finished any of his flower beds during his turn, we would score those. And finally, phase number 4 is the gardener phase, where you simply advance the die 1 space. And then it's already Red's turn. There's nothing to refill. He can simply take a tile, and just let's take this one and put it on his right flower bed, like this. We advance the die, and it's Yellow's turn. Each player can at any time during the game take any 1 tile just to see how it would fit on his board, and while he does that, we place the parasol as a reminder on the space in the nursery where the tile came from. This has no game effect per se, but it's a good reminder. Yellow decides to take this tile. He advances the die, then it's the blue player's turn again. Now he has a bit less of a selection because, of course, 1 tile has already been taken. There's no refill yet. He could, however, if he wanted to, pay one of his cat tokens to actually trigger a refill, meaning that this tile would become available to him. But he decides to simply take this tile. Then it's the red player's turn, and he decides to take this tile because it fits neatly in here like this. Then it's yellow again, and he decides to take this one. Then it's blue again, and he takes this one. Now, on red's turn, the entire row is empty, so we refill it, starting from this end of the queue and starting with the space that is closest to the gardener. And we advance the wheelbarrow. And our red has an interesting choice because this tile could fit very nicely, but then he's left with a single space and another space with two. This one would also be nice if you put it like this, and then he's missing a 4-piece tile like this. And the thing is, there's one here and there's one here. Since he knows that it'll be his turn again once the die is over here, and by the way, you can use these little arrows. Right now he always has the spaces with the one arrow. He's sure to get that tile because on the next turns the other players won't be able to get it because they can select from this row and this row respectively. So this is actually a good choice. And then it's the yellow player's turn. And yellow decides to actually use a cat, so let's return to the supply to refill this row. And then he takes this tile and puts it here. Then it's blue's turn again. Blue decides to take this tile. He puts it on his second flower bed, knowing that he can fill this 1x2 gap because he can get this tile on his next turn and nobody can take it away from him. Then it's red's turn again. As already planned, he takes this tile, puts it on here, and then every space except those containing flower pots or plant covers is covered, so we can score this tile. When a tile is scored, we first count the flower pots, in this case 2, and then we have to pick one of our orange markers and advance it 2 spaces for 2 points. Then we count the number of plant covers, 3, and we take one of our blue scoring tokens, advance it 3 spaces, but each of those spaces is worth 2 points, so currently we're at 8 points, 6 plus 2. And during a single scoring phase you can never split the steps among multiple cubes, you always have to stay with one, and this gets more interesting as we approach the goal or certain bonus spaces, but we'll get to that later. Then all the tiles are returned to the end of the queue in any order that the player likes. Right now we'll just return them randomly. Then the current flower bed is flipped to its other side, put back into the supply, and the tile from the supply is added to the player's tableau. And then it's yellow's turn. And he simply decides to take this tile and put it on like this. Then we move to blue. As mentioned earlier, he likes this tile. And by the way, this one has a flower pot printed on it, so that'll be an extra point during scoring. Then it's red's turn again. He decides to take this tile and put it here. Yellow, but first, since we reached the target space for 3 players, we advance the die by 1. And as you can probably guess, once it'll be at 6, we're going to the final round. Yellow decides to take this tile. So he has 1 space left. Now, he could use his cat to cover that space because cats can be used to cover gaps of 1. So he'd be able to score it immediately, but there's actually no rush because on his next turn, when the die will be here, he'll be able to get this tile, which will give him an extra 2 points. Then it's the blue player's turn again. He decides to take this one, put it over here, so he's taking his time with actually completing a flower bed. Then it's red's turn again. We have to refill the row. Red decides to take this tile. Then it's yellow's turn. We have to refill. But as already mentioned, yellow wants to take this tile. So the flower bed is completed. First, he'll get 2 points for the flower pots. And then 8 for the plant covers. And since he crossed the red line with the mice, he gets another cat from the supply. And I just realized, since yellow had this tile with a flower pot on it, he should actually have received 3 points. Then all the tiles are put to the end of the queue. Once the queue is shorter, then you can take more consideration of how you actually want to put the tiles back. But right now, that probably doesn't matter that much. We turn over the tile to the other side and take this one. Then it's Blue's turn again. He decides to take this tile, knowing that 2 turns from now there is a tile that would exactly fit that spot, but hopefully the player whose turn it is here won't take it. Then it's the red player's turn. He's lucky. He can take this tile, and then on his next turn he'll be able to get this tile, and that'll exactly fit. Over to yellow. He takes this tile, puts it here. Then it's Blue's turn. Now Blue could take this tile and put it like this, but then he'd missing 2 separate spaces, or a single big one, which then would cover the plant cover. He could use both his cats to finish the tile, and then actually, because he'd get 7 points from flower pots, he'd be able to get another cat back. So he decides to do that. 2 points for the plant covers. 7 for the flower pots. Then it's Red's turn. He takes this tile. He decides to take the 4 points for the flower pots with the same cube, which is now 6. And then he'd get 2 steps with a blue cube. However, he'd get a cat if he uses this cube. And you can only have 2 cats at most. Yes, he could use one of them, but he'd have 2 completely empty flower beds, so guessing that the cat would go best is a bit hard. So he decides to actually use another cube to get those 4 points. On the other hand, whoever reaches 20 first will get a bonus that we'll talk about then. So let's see whether this was actually a good idea. Then it's yellow's turn. We have to refill. He decides to take the single tile over here and put it here. Then it's easier to fill this area of the board. Then it's Blue's turn. He wanted this tile in order to finish this flower bed. He gets 4 points for his flower pots. He decides to take this cube, as well as 4 points or 2 steps with the blue cube. He decides to take this one. Then it's Red's turn and we have to refill. He decides to take this one. So it's yellow's turn. Yellow takes this tile. So it's Blue's turn. Blue takes this tile. So it's red again. He decides to take this tile, put it here. Then for yellow we have to refill. Yellow takes this tile, leaving a gap of 1, but he knows that he'll get the tile that fits in here on his next turn. So Blue, and by the way we have to turn the die to 3. Blue takes this tile, puts it over here. Then it's Red's turn, and he decides to take this tile and put it here. Then yellow, he takes this tile, puts it here, and he decides to use a cat to finish the bed. So he gets 4 steps with an orange cube. He gets another cat, and 3 steps with a blue cube. He decides to take this one. Then it's Blue's turn and we have to refill. He decides to take this one and puts it here. Then it's Red and we have to refill. Red takes this one, puts it over here, and then it's yellow. Yellow decides to take this one and put it here like this. Then blue, he takes this tile and puts it here. Then red takes this tile, and he also decides to use both his cats to finish this flower bed. He gets 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 orange points. So he gets another cat, and he gets 1, 2, 3 steps with a blue cube. So he gets another cat. Then it's yellow. He decides to take this tile and put it here. And then it's blue. And he takes this tile. Then it's red. And we refill. Red decides to take this tile. Then yellow takes this tile and puts it up here. Then blue. First we refill. He decides to take this one. He only has one cat left, so it does make sense to try and close this off now. Then red. He decides to take this tile. Put it in here like this. Then it's yellow again. Yellow decides to pay a cat to refill his row now. Then he takes this tile and puts it like this. Then it's blue. While blue could use his last cat to refill this one tile and finish this flower bed, I'm not sure whether this is a good idea, because he still would be able to get one cube up to 20. So let's simply take this tile instead and put it here. Then red, and we have to turn the die to 4. First we refill. Red takes this tile. Then it's yellow, and he takes this tile, puts it here. Then it's blue again. He takes this tile and places it up here. Then it's red, who takes this tile, puts it here, and then decides to use both his cats to finish the tile. He gets 2 steps for a blue cube. He decides to take this one, which moves from 12 to 14 to 20. Also, because he's the first to actually get a cube in the goal, he gets the first beehive token, which is worth an extra 2 points, because there's 2 beehives on it. And then he gets 4 steps with an orange cube, and decides to take this one. Then it's yellow, and we refill. He decides to take this one and put it here. And it's blue. Now we could take this tile, put it in this gap and finish the flower bed. However, that'll only score him 4 orange points. So instead he decides to take this tile with a flower pot on it and use his cat. So he gets 5 points. That'll give him the second beehive token, which is at least worth 1 point. And then he gets 4 points with a blue cube. So he gets 1 cat back. Then it's red. He takes this tile. Then yellow, we have to refill. He takes this tile, puts it here. So this one's finished. There's 8 flower pots on it, no plant covers. So now he has to decide. 8 would put him exactly here, very close to the goal. However, in the next scoring he'd have to forfeit some points. So he decides to take another cube until here and get another cat. Then it's blue. He decides to take this tile and put it here. Then red takes a single tile, puts it here. Then it's yellow and we refill. He takes this one, puts it like this. Then it's blue. He decides to use a cat to trigger refill, because he's interested in this 1x2 tile. So you can put it here and finally finish that flower bed. There's 4 points for the flower pots and another 6 for the plant covers, which is exactly enough. Then it's red, who decides to take this tile and put it here, since he knows that he can get this tile on his next turn. Then yellow, he decides to take this tile and cover this plant cover up here to get this flower bed done, and since he has only one step available anyway, he figures that it doesn't matter that much. There's also 4 flower pots. Then it's blue. He decides to take this tile. Red, and we refill. Red wanted this one. Then it's yellow, and we turn the die to 5. He decides to take this tile and put it here. Then blue decides to take this tile and put it here. Then it's red, who decides to take this tile, put it here. Yellow gets a refill, and he takes this tile. Then it's blue again, and he decides to take this one. Although now it will be very hard to actually fill this last piece down here. Then red gets a refill, and then takes this one. So this tile is finished. 4 flower pots, so it decides to use this cube. So it gets another cat, and there's 5 plant covers. Then it's yellow, who is very lucky, or he planned well, because this tile fits exactly in here. There's 2 flower pots and 3 plant covers. Then it's blue. Here, let's take this tile and put it here. And then red takes this tile and puts it here. Yellow gets a refill, takes this tile and puts it here. Then blue takes this tile, puts it here. Then it's red, takes this tile and puts it here. Then yellow decides to use a cat to trigger refill, and then take this tile and put it down here. Then it's blue, and he decides to take this tile, put it like this. Then it's red. He first gets a refill, and he decides to take this one. Then yellow gets a refill. He takes this one, puts it here, deciding to cover 1 flower pot. Then the die moves and is changed to the 6, so we move into the final round. What happens now is that every player has to give up all flower beds with 2 or fewer tiles. So for red, that's this one. For yellow, it's this one. Blue actually gets to keep both of his, and it's also his turn. What also happens in the final round is that at the start of your turn you lose 2 points. Blue decides to take this tile, finish this flower bed. That's 1 point for an orange cube. He decides to move the last orange cube, because once you've moved all cubes of one color away from the starting space, you'll get 1 flower pot that you can immediately use. And knowing that on his next turn he'll be able to get this tile, he decides to put the flower pot down here. Then we still have 4 plant covers, so 1 cube is moved to 8, and we get another cat. And then this flower bed is simply removed, we do not get a new one. And then it's red's turn. Red first loses 2 points, then uses his final cat to trigger refill. It's only 1 tile, but it's exactly the one he needs to finish his flower bed. 1 plant cover. Okay, wait a second. Instead of losing these 2 points at the start of his turn, he should have lost these two, because then when we score 6 points for the flower pots, we lose one, but still getting to 20 is the better choice. Then this one is removed, and then he's basically done. The only thing he'll do on his future turns is performing the gardener phase. Then it's yellow's turn. He first loses 2 points. Then he picks this tile and is able to finish his flower bed. Unfortunately, it's only 3 points for flower pots and another 4 for plant covers. Then he's also finished. Then it's blue's turn. He loses another 2 points. Then he takes this tile and also finishes his last flower bed. So he gets another 4 for blue and another 5 for orange. He gets another cat, but that won't give him any points. Then of course this flower bed is cleared and the game is over. Then for the final scoring, blue has 40 and 10 is 50 and 7 is 57 and 1 is 58 and 1 is 59. Red has 60 plus 6 is 66 plus 2 is 68, and yellow has 20 plus 15 is 35 plus 10 is 45 plus 7 is 52. So red is the overall winner. And that was one full 3-player game of Cottage Garden. A couple of notes on the different player counts. You've seen the 3-player game. The gardener die starts on the start space with 1 showing, and the only peculiar thing is that the goal space is actually over here. In a 2-player game, both the start and the goal are the same. However, you start with a die showing the 2, so basically you play 1 round less. For the solo game, you also put the die here. You also start with the die showing the 2. However, in each gardener phase, you advance the die by 2 spaces. So basically, you're always playing in rows and columns 1 and 3. You don't use the beehives, and the rules tell us that 70 points are very good and 80 points are outstanding. Then finally, the game for 4 players is actually on the back. Start and goal are the same. However, now we also use the spaces in the corners, and whenever the die moves here, basically the gardener row is actually a diagonal. Otherwise, the 4-player game works exactly like the 3-player game. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this overview of Cottage Garden. Hopefully you could see that this is a very quick game to play. Turns are very short. There's hardly any downtime, maybe some puzzling and trying around different options. The rules are very simple, more or less after your first or second turn. You've understood how the game works. The flow is very clear because the gardener die moves around the board. You can always plan ahead because you know which tiles will be available to you, whether somebody will be able to take them before you do, whether they'll actually need it, whether it makes sense for them because they can put it on their board or not. I hardly used the 1x1 flower pot tiles at all in the walkthrough. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, you have the option to don't take a flower tile from the nursery, but take a flower pot instead. I'm not sure whether that should have happened more often in the game or not. Regarding the cats, I really like the flexibility that they give you. You can use them to refill the board if there's a tile in the queue that you really need. Also, you can use them to score earlier than you normally would, which is crucial regarding the race for the beehives, but also towards the end of the game. Regarding the scoring track, I think I read an interview with Uwe where he mentioned that a simple scoring track would simply have been too boring, so he wanted to do something more interesting. First, with the jogging to make it exactly to 20 points, not to waste any points. On the other hand, the step is big enough that wasting a few points is probably a good idea if you can get to 20 actually. You have to decide when to get new cats. You can try to push all your cubes from the start space to get those flower points, but of course then it's harder to get a single cube up to 20. I also like how efficient you have to do with the puzzling. If you cover too many flower pots or plant covers, then it's basically a waste of your time because those are the only way you score. On the other hand, if you're too careful not to cover anything, maybe you're too slow and then you'll score, but not quick enough. And I guess that's already it. Thanks for watching, have fun playing, and until next time. Bye bye.